And thank you. I guess it's always women first, is that right? Just remember that when you go to the ballot box. I thank you guys for coming out tonight and taking time to get to know how I will represent you in Washington, D.C. Most of you in this audience already know, as I am your state senator, the 12th Senate District. I work hard, diligent, and I care about my constituents, and it shows in my efforts. My husband and I just live west of here in Parker, Lynn County. We own and operate Tyson Ranch. I'm a 5th generation Kansan. My husband is 5th generation Lynn County. I have a mathematics degree from K-State, Bachelor of Science, also computer science from K-State, Bachelor of Science. I've got Masters of Engineering Management from KU. Had the opportunity to work on small businesses to large corporations, international corporations. Most notably, the project that you guys would recognize is NASA. I was on space shuttle support for NASA. I was looking at that. I kind of tend to put stuff in a box after I finish with my awards and stuff and not pay much attention to them. Well, now that I'm running for Congress, everybody wants to, see the awards, know what's going on. So I pulled them out the other day, and I was looking at it, and astronaut Steve Howley had one of the same awards I did, and I was on mission support on one of his missions. So talk about a small world, a Kansas astronaut and a Kansas computer scientist working on the same projects. So it was pretty cool. I am running for this seat because we need somebody with a diverse background and somebody that is willing to stand up for what they believe. I say what I mean, and I mean what I say. I'm not trying to run away from my record. I'm running on my record. I will work hard for you, to represent you, and I look forward to your questions tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. The next on the list is Steve. Excuse me? Yes. Is that you? Jeez, you almost missed recess. 3 minutes opening. Tell me about yourself.
My name is?
Yeah. Great. Sit down or stand right there.
Just no thanks. Appreciate it. Somebody needs to put me in my place. Well, we got another one. Too many mics.
If you were stopping so you get all your recess in, or?
I always appreciate it. And, yeah, thank you very much. I very much appreciate it. My apologies for being late. If you don't know it, there's a lot of work going on up there, and they stop you and hold you. They won't let you go forward. Don't smile like you want to talk. They stop you right in front of a Kevin Jones sign. And I noticed that right away. Appreciate it. I'm Steve Fitzgerald. I'm Senator from Leavenworth County. I'm running for the United States Congress, along with these two fine legislators here as well, and this ex-legislator here, who's also running. I'm running because I believe it's extremely important that we actually accomplish what the President laid out as his agenda when he won the last election. That agenda is to restore American security and bring back American prosperity. Our security has been in decline for a long time. Our armed forces are not in good shape. I know that. I'm a retired Army officer. Spent 20 years, joined as a private, got out as lieutenant colonel, served in infantry and special forces. And I can tell you, from my experience having been in the Army, and from what my son and daughter tell me, who are in the Army, we're in a little bit of trouble, and have been. The Navy is getting dents in their boats because they're running into everything that's afloat out there, largely because the officers are not as well trained as they should be. That came out last week. We don't have the maintenance or training that we need on our ships because we're understaffed and under-resourced. Large number of our combat aircraft are on the ground for lack of maintenance and repair parts, excuse me, sir. That has to be fixed. It is being fixed, but it's a long haul. We need good, dependable, adequate resources for our military and also for the rest of our security forces, such as the Border Patrol. Talking about the security, we're talking about illegal immigration, and I believe we have to take care of that with whatever means we need to do in order to get that done. It's an extremely important part of American security. American economy or prosperity, we have seen growth in 1% to 2% range for about 8 years. We need to be back 3 to 4, possibly a little more than 4% a year, as we have done historically. Coming out of recovery, normally we come out at about 4 to 4.5% growth. We came out of this almost no growth at all, anywhere near that, and we've been hurting because of it. So I think what's been going on so far with the tax cut, with reducing regulations, we've begun to see growth in our economy. That needs to be sustained and it needs to be continued. I'm running because I think we need a Congress that's going to be a good partner on behalf of the American people with this president to make sure that we continue to do the things that he promised he would do when we elected him. We did not elect him for any other reason than we like his agenda. We need to get that. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next is Paul Davis.
It's a little tight up here on the stage here. Well, thank you very much for having us here, and delighted to be back in Anderson County. I'm a lifelong Kansan. I've spent my entire life living here in eastern Kansas, and I'm no stranger to the 2nd Congressional District. I've been traveling up and down these roads for many, many decades. I'm also the son of 2 teachers and the parent of an 8-year-old who's soon to be 3rd grader. So education is an issue that is near and dear to my heart. My wife spends her days and spent her entire career serving veterans. She serves as the Suicide Prevention Coordinator for the Eastern Kansas VA, and she reminds me on a daily basis of how important it is that we honor and that we support the men and the women that have served in our military. Both of us are still paying our student loans, and we understand the struggles that many Americans are having with the price of a college education or a community college education these days. We lost my dad this past year. My dad had Parkinson's, and I saw firsthand the struggles that my parents had in dealing with the overwhelming healthcare costs. My dad had many drugs that he needed every day just to be able to get out of bed. One of them cost over $1,000 a month. And I was there for that kitchen table discussion that so many Americans are having right now about how can they afford prescription drugs, and we've got to do something in Washington to change that. I spent 12 years in the Kansas Legislature, building coalitions between Democrats and Republicans to get things done. Whether it was making the most significant investment in our public schools that we have made in quite some time, whether it was passing our comprehensive transportation plan, one of the largest job-creating programs our state has ever endeavored in. That's why when I ran for governor, we had over 180 current and former Republican elected officials that endorsed my campaign, and they are with me in this campaign as well, because they know that I'm a problem solver, and they know that that's what Washington, D.C. needs right now. We need people who are going to put our country long before our political party. It's one of the reasons why I said on the day that I announced I was running for Congress that I will not support Nancy Pelosi to be the next Democratic leader, whether it's the Speaker or the minority leader. We need people in Congress who are connected to our communities, people who are going to work across the aisle to solve the problems that the American people want. That's what I did for 12 years, and that's what I want to do for you in the United States Congress. Thank you for having us here tonight.
Next is Kevin Jones.
Thank you. You guys are quiet. Good evening. Hey, just so you guys know, if I scoot out of here real quick, or in the middle of a question, it's because my wife went into labor. Finally, she is, we are 4 days overdue. I just went live on Facebook and said it was 4 days overdue, but with number 8. And so we are certainly pro-life. But very, very grateful for this coming blessing, and just thankful for also for the folks who put this thing on, the Rotary Club and Farm Bureau, for the high school, and everything. Thank you guys, Anderson County. Thank you guys for putting this on. This is great. I am Kevin Jones. I am the current state representative for Anderson County for this whole area, and a little bit of Franklin County, a little bit of Lynn County, a little bit of Miami County also. But with that, really the question I want to answer for you right now is just why I'm running for Congress. And truthfully, what it really comes down to is there is a battle going on. It's been going on for quite some time over our faith, over our family, and over our freedom. And as I just said, we have 8 kiddos, and their posterity, their life, their platform, their opportunity, their hope, their prosperity is what is so front and center for us every single day. That's what we want to fight for. That's what we want to. That's why we're doing this whole thing. As you know, many of you guys know that I was a pastor down in the Wichita areas where I met my bride. Pastored for about 7.5 years. Answered the call to public leadership and service. Matthew 20:26-28, where really the greatest among us will be a servant and will give up his life as a ransom for many. And for myself, I felt like serving was the greatest thing that I could do. And so when we came back after the military, back to Wellsville, we just offered ourselves in service and did everything from Wellsville Days Committee to Planning Commission and to School Board, and then was asked to run for state representative, and I've been a state representative now for 6 years. At this point, I'm term limiting myself at the state level. And I am running now for Congress, and really what it comes down to is that I don't want to leave a debt to my children. Today, does anyone know how much our debt is? You guys know what our national debt is? Yeah. Our national debt. Well, let's just say it was 20 trillion about 7 months ago, and now it's over 21 trillion. Are you kidding me? That's just our debt, our deficit spending. It's just something that we continue to do. We cannot do it. I talked a little bit online about my Dave Ramsey experience, my family's Dave Ramsey experience, and how that set us free. We reduced our overhead, and so we don't owe anybody anything. That's what we have to do, not only in our families, but at the federal level too. So that's why we're running our children.
So those are the congressional races. Next, we'll go to the governor's race. And again, I'm going off the sheet that was given me. The first up is Carl Brewer, or the spokesman.
Hi, I'm a United States Army veteran, and over the years, since the 8 years that I've been out, I've had 3 friends kill themselves. I've had multiple friends who have died from complications, from injuries that they have suffered from combat. To the gentleman who stated that we should be growing our armed services. Why should we be growing our armed services when we cannot take care of the veterans that we currently have?
Thank you for that question. Reverse order, Kevin Jones.
I'm not sure who answered that question or who said that, but that said, I appreciate the question. Thank you for your service, sir. I also am a veteran, and I've also had friends that I served with that have dealt with PTSD and suicide too, families too. That said, the mental health issues in our nation are only going up. You can see it all across the board in substance abuse, opioid addiction, suicide, all across the board. It's something that only is going to increase. I know some of the best actual organizations to combat this are faith-based organizations. That's one of the first things I would suggest. But with that, mental health and our law enforcement, we need to support our law enforcement. We need to support those in our sheriff's department, police department, all across the board, because what's happening is all of that is falling back on them. That said, when it comes to getting good patriots, getting good people to step up for service, it's all the harder. It is. When I entered the service, I was the first person in 2 months. I tell this story. I was the first person in 2 months that they had in that was clean. They didn't have drugs in their system. It's very, very difficult to get people to even come into the military right now. That can actually get in, whether it's because they have a propensity not to come in, or because they have drugs. So we need to get back and talk about the opioid and the drug addiction too.
Paul Davis?
I also want to thank you for your service, and I especially want to thank you for your question. It's a question that I think about a lot because, as I mentioned in my comments earlier, my wife serves as the suicide prevention coordinator for the Eastern Kansas VA. If I'm elected to Congress, I will not even come close to having the hardest job in our household. And she tells me stories, heartbreaking stories, day in and day out. And she will also tell you that there's a lot of issues at the VA, and the VA needs more resources, it needs better management, because this is a huge, huge problem. And the VA also can't do it all. We need the Department of Defense to step up. We need our community mental health centers to step up. Mental health in the state has been cut significantly over the past decade, and oftentimes that first person that can have an impact on somebody who's thinking about suicide is somebody that's in a community mental health center, and they work hand in hand with the VA and all of the other resources that we have. But the bottom line is I think we as a country have to understand how profound this is. And we have to understand that it shouldn't be politicized. It isn't a Republican issue, it isn't a Democrat issue. And it's something that we're going to have to work together on because we have been able to reduce the number of veteran suicides, but it is far too many than it should be.
Steve Fitzgerald.
Yeah, thank you for the question. Excellent question. The question was, why would we want to increase our military when we have so many veterans who are committing suicide?
When we cannot take care of the veterans that we currently have.
Okay, as you stated. The point is, what's causing suicides? Now, when I spoke earlier, I spoke about the stress that we were placing on our own forces because they were under-resourced. I can tell you for a fact that we were putting combat soldiers into combat, back out, back in, back out, doing the same thing with the Navy. They were coming back to port and turning around and going right back out again. This puts so much stress on the individual that you're going to have the problems that we saw very clearly in the Navy with the ships that they've had problems with the collisions they've had and so forth, but the same problems have been showing up in the other services as well. We're stressing our forces. Now the question is, should we just take our forces off the board? Do we have the luxury of walking out of various places? We tried that once in Iraq. It did not work well. We have to use our forces carefully and judiciously. I told you that includes my son, who has 5 deployments to Iraq and Afghanistan. It includes my daughter, who had several deployments to Korea. It includes my son-in-law, who had worldwide deployments. I understand the problem. The answer is to have appropriate resources in there so we're not overstressing our soldiers and ourselves and our airmen.
Thank you. Karen Tyson.
We do need to support our military, and we do need more resources with the current military, but also with our veterans. One of the things that Senator Moran has worked on is allowing veterans, if they're not within reach of a VA, to have access to hospitals and other treatment. If I'm elected, I will fight for military personnel and veterans to have an insurance card that they can use at their local hospitals and their local pharmacies. It helps the communities, the small rural communities. It helps our veterans so they don't have to travel hours for resources. Mental health, I'll touch on that a little bit. That is such a big issue, not just for the state of Kansas, but for our nation. And those of you who know me and know my service, I fought very hard for Osawatomie State Hospital. In fact, I carried the amendment on the floor that would block privatizing Osawatomie State Hospital unless it had legislative approval. And I'll quote a movie, I'll paraphrase it. If you've ever seen the Armageddon movie, they're sitting on a rocket ship getting ready to blast off, on X thousand number of moving parts and fuel, and it was built by the lowest bidder. Is that what we want to do with our mental health system in Kansas? Absolutely not. And we shouldn't be doing that as a nation either. We need to provide the resources that are needed.
Thank you. Do we have any questions for the Secretary of State or for the 5th District State Representative? If not, I guess I'll have to make some up. Okay, do we have another question for the Congressional so we can... I'm trying to get people that haven't asked a question.
Okay, Congress is working on a new farm bill. It really shouldn't affect you because it should be done before you'll ever get into office. But just in case they don't, like some years prior, that's carried over into the next administration and all. But I'd like to know some of your thoughts on what maybe should be in the farm bill and or maybe what shouldn't be in.
Okay, reverse order, Karen Tyson.
Well, I hope you're right, and they do have the Farm Bureau bill finished before we get up there, but you never know with Congress, the way things are going. One of the things that we absolutely need to keep in the Farm Bill is the food program, the SNAP program. Most people aren't aware, but it is being debated as to those programs coming out of the Farm Bill. If that does happen, we will have trouble negotiating the next Farm Bill. Part of the reason that we are able to pass that legislation is because it does impact so many people nationwide. We also need to have crop insurance. We can't afford to lose that. It's critical to our farmers. Look at the drought that we're in. I mean, if somebody mentioned that the ag economy impacts 44% of our state, well, it impacts more than that. It impacts every person that eats in this state. It impacts everybody in this nation. So we are feeding the world, literally, and we are feeding Kansans. So agriculture is critical. As I said, my husband and I live on the ranch. We own and operate. I was raised in a small agribusiness. My first job in computer science, IT, was with Farm Bureau. Farm Bureau is a big part of my life. My husband is Lynn County President of Farm Bureau, and my rock, by the way. He's the reason I'm here. So the Farm Bill is critical, and we need to make sure that we get it right, because it may be one that we have for many years.
Thank you. Steve Fitzgerald.
Thank you. A very timely and appropriate question for this group. The point has been made that the nutrition part of the program, which is about 80% of the funding in the Farm Bill, does go to the SNAP program, to food stamps, and the reason for it is accurately described as being a political reason, and that is so that you can get enough support from various people, urban areas and so forth. However, I would like to see that reduced significantly. I'd like to see that moved away from the Farm Bill as much as we can. I understand the political realities of that, but we're being told that this much is the Farm Bill, and it's not. It's actually quite a bit less than that that's actually going to support agriculture and the things that we actually need to be taken care of. The political problem there is as stated, but it has to be faced, and we should take care of that. The Farm Bill is necessary, but I would hope it to become less necessary as we move forward. I hope that we're going to be able to solve some of the tariff questions that were brought up earlier, and we'll be able to continue to export and find new markets, which would help the farmers. Increasing the prosperity and the economy of the United States will reduce the need for SNAP and for nutrition. I think putting in more work requirements on those programs and training requirements for the recipients of those programs will bring down that demand, improve their lives, and at the same time reduce the size of the Farm Bill and focus it more on what it's supposed to be focused on, which is the farm. Thank you.
Thank you. Paul Davis.
Thank you for that question. It's a very timely question. I've been spending a lot of time holding ag roundtables around the 2nd District with farmers and other people that work in agriculture, and I've certainly heard loud and clear how important the Farm Bill is. The crop insurance component of the Farm Bill is absolutely critical to every family farmer. And we've got 20,000 farms in the 2nd District. Agriculture is the backbone of the economy here. And a new Farm Bill is critically important. You know, we have farm incomes are at a 12-year low right now. It is getting tougher and tougher for family farmers to make it. Many of them are trying to find second jobs in order to be able to survive. And I think the United States Congress needs to send a very strong message to agriculture that we value you, we are going to prioritize you. And traditionally, the Congress has gone about putting together a farm bill in a bipartisan way. It's one of, you look at Congress and all the things that they do wrong, and boy, there's plenty of them. But Democrats and Republicans have been able to work together in order to produce a farm bill. And the SNAP program that Karen referenced is an important component of that. The fact of the matter is there aren't enough rural legislators who really care about a farm bill as much as we do to be able to put together a majority of votes. And that's why the SNAP program is an important component of it. But I sincerely hope that Congress is not going to let down all the farmers that live here in Kansas and all across the country, because we need a farm bill, and we need a farm bill now.
Thank you. Kevin Jones?
Thank you for the question, and yes, very timely. I want to mention two things when it comes to timely. But first, there's a couple things that are in the news that are definite needs, right? Water, food, and it impacts us a lot. When I say water, this is where I get the timely. Right now, when government gets bored, what do? Well, they start to try and regulate our waterways, right? And we've had some stuff in Kansas where we push back on that. Regulating our waterways, our puddles, our streams, and that kind of stuff, come on. And so we push back on that. When it comes to our food, the Farm Bill is a need. It's not something that we just play with, it's a need. And what we find right now is we find politics are getting in the way. You've got Senate coming out with a bill that takes off the work requirements, or you have the House, groups in the House that are fighting to keep certain parts in, or to even attach DACA and stuff about illegal aliens. What happens is people take something that's a need, or our representatives in Congress take something that's a need, and they attach a bunch of stuff and say, I will not vote unless it has this. The truth is, it's a need. The SNAP part, it's an important thing. The work requirements, I'm down with work requirements, but here's the deal. We got to get a Farm Bill through. That's it. We have to get the Farm Bill through. So ultimately, we can go for without having that predictability, but we need that predictability. We need it through.
Thank you. Scott Schwab, Secretary of State race. I said I would come up with a question.
I think we should pass a farm.
Do that at the Secretary of State's office. To get more people out to vote, what are your ideas?
It's just a fact of life. When you have contested elections, that's the #1 driver to get people to vote. So when you have this many candidates for Congress, this many candidates for governor, that's what really gets people to pique their interest in voting. I really believe that we've done most. It's really interesting that the government really can't make you vote. And I don't think the government should be compelling people to vote in kind of a hammer kind of way. But really what it is it's organizations like Farm Bureau that engage in the community level, recruiting for school board members, recruiting for mayors and city council and county commissioners, and also for the state school board, as well as all these other races. The biggest thing is having your political parties, which are a huge part of our government system, recruit candidates, because the more candidates you have, the more engagement you have. And you actually have a more educated voter, simply because you have people competing in the marketplace of ideas. So really, I just continue to make sure that really Farm Bureau and the political parties recruit candidates. You recruit candidates, you recruit people who go to the polls.
Thank you. And then Renee Slinger, running for 5th District State Representative. The only question I can think of is,
Yes. As we're all aware, taxation is initiated in the House of Representatives, and that's what funds the federal government. As a candidate for that office, do you support increasing the size of the federal government? If so, what taxation methods do you propose to pay for that? Or do you support shrinking the size of the federal government? If so, what areas? And what taxes would you offer relief from?
you'll have a day and a half to answer that question. Kevin Jones, you're first.
I appreciate the question. Ultimately, and I believe that we're all for an efficient government. It will be the job of Congress to determine the taxes. Ultimately, I believe in lower taxes. You get more money back to the people, more hands in your, or more money in your, more hands in your hands. Okay. More money in your hands, that's yours, and you spending it, that's the way it should be. I believe that you know how to spend your money best. And by doing that, you also hold us accountable, holds our feet to the fire. So we got things, this is stuff I guess you learn when you start running for Congress. The members of Congress literally get, and they brought it down to this, to $1,000 just so they can lease a car. $1,000 a month for a car, this is what our tax dollars go for. And so when it comes to that, it comes down to really just getting the details and looking at them and knowing that that's where our tax dollars are going for. I'm for lower taxes, and I'm for, and I believe that if you put that in the hands of the people, ultimately it's going to broaden the base. It'll be more that comes back to government. But I don't believe that government should be so giant. It should be in the hands of in our pockets. I believe that it should be smaller and more efficient. So ultimately, that's where I stand.
Thank you. Paul Davis?
Well, I would like to see a leaner government as well. I'm not in favor of growing government at all. I spent a year working in a state agency a long time ago, and I left that experience with the fundamental belief that fewer people can actually get the job done than we had in that particular state agency. And I think that holds true across the board, whether, no matter what agency you're looking at. There are some places where, frankly, I think we need some more resources. We've talked about the VA as one, where there's some serious needs. But I think there's a lot of agencies that we need to take a top to bottom look at. And we need to have good people who understand how to manage an agency there. Sometimes that comes from the business community. Sometimes it also just comes from people who have experience and they know an agency and they know how to make it run better. And I'd like to see us getting the best people that we can to make sure that we are using, again, your tax dollars, not the government's tax dollars, your tax dollars as wisely as we possibly can.
Thank you. Steve Fitzgerald?
Yeah, thank you very much. It's a very important, if not the most important question that we're going to face. The power of the purse is an extremely important power. It should be the ultimate power because the president can do what he wants, but he can't pay for it. That's up to the Congress to pay for it. And as I say, taxation must begin in the House of Representatives. I lived in Washington, D.C. I served 3 years in the Pentagon. I can tell you that there's a significant amount of waste in the Pentagon that can be cut. There is across the board. Right now, the 5 most wealthy counties in the country are directly around Washington, D.C. I wish I never sold my house, but I did. How did they get to be so wealthy? They're taking your money and sending it to Washington, D.C., where the lobbyists and the contractors and the various apparatchiks of our government are using your money. They're growing that exponentially. That has to stop. And so your question was, where do you cut? Frankly, everywhere. And some of the agencies can pretty much be taken down to nothing. There's a number of them that need to go away, at least in large measure, and what remaining functions they have can be folded into other agencies. And we need to do that as quickly as possible. And as mentioned, reducing your taxes will increase the economy, will increase the revenue to the government in any case. Thank you.
Thank you. Karen Tyson?
Thank you. I support limited government. I think we have a government that's out of control. In fact, I know it. All we have to do is look for it, or look at it. There are several ways that we can shrink government. One is, look how massive our federal government is and the duplicate programs that go on. We can cut duplicate programs, we can become more efficient. We should be able to, especially with the technology. But the major savings that we can have as a state and a nation is by cutting fraud and abuse on the programs that we have. We spend billions of dollars of tax money for fraudulent tax forms filed at the federal level. One of the amendments that I was able to get on at the state level would require, when you filled out an application for a benefit, it checked for fraud when you were filling out the application. It checked to see who you were, say you were. That saves the state money because they don't have to chase somebody that's trying to bilk the system. So that's what we need to do. Take advantage of the technology and get a smart system. Smaller, smarter government.
Thank you. This next question, possibly our last question, will be addressed to both the congressional and the governor's race.
My name is Nate Whale. I'm a pharmacist locally here at Auburn Pharmacy, and I'm a board-certified advanced diabetes manager as well. I manage the hospital pharmacy here at Anderson County Hospital. I have the unfortunate job of telling people on a daily basis what their drugs cost, and it is it's not a job I truly enjoy, and I can tell you it's not my fault. Even though I'm the one selling the product to them, I'm the one that has to break them the news of how much it costs, and it's appalling to me how many prescriptions are abandoned because people can't afford them. One question we have to ask and one problem we have to solve before we tackle how we're going to pay for healthcare is why it costs so much. So I'd like to know from everybody up there at a state level for the gubernatorial candidates and a federal level for those seeking a position at the House of Representatives, what will you do to help control the rising costs of healthcare, and for my interest, specifically prescription drug costs, but it's a big topic and there's a lot of ways to do it, so I'd like to hear your best ideas.
Okay, we'll start with the congressional race, and I think Kevin Jones, you're up first. Okay, Karen Tyson says she's up first.
Obamacare, replace, repeal. That's one thing that we can do. It would help our small businesses. We get to a point of about 50 employees in a small business, and they're required to either decide about their health insurance, how they're going to handle it for their employees, or break off and start another business. The other item that we could do is we have a requirement on step therapy. That harms people more than anything. We're getting government in between our doctor, our pharmacist, and the patient. We need to remove that. Government should not be in the room. The other thing is telemedicine was mentioned, and that kind of runs into one of the issues that I want to work on as a legislator, and that's infrastructure. We need roads and highways, not just 69, 169. We also need broadband, and that does allow us to do items such as telemedicine. That would bring down the cost. The other thing is Obamacare required us to have items in our insurance that you'll never need, like the maternity insurance. And for providing, another thing that it did also was forcing individuals to purchase items that are against their religion. If they are Catholic, they would be against birth control. And Obamacare required that. So we need to repeal and replace that system.
Thank you. Steve Fitzgerald?
The theme that I hear coming through all of this is that the patient dealing primarily with the doctor is the best way to go. It's kind of the old-time way of doing business. And that's the main theme that we hear. And there's a lot of studies that show that when you have first person and I'm paying for my care, the cost of care comes down. But when you get somebody else paying for it, the cost of care goes up. And it's not just in medicine. This applies everywhere. I would like to make 2 points. One is cannabis. I'm not a pothead, and I don't think we ought to become Colorado. But I do think that we have other medicine that we need to take a look at. I did put in a bill for non-intoxicating cannabinoid medicine to be legal in Kansas. I think it has demonstrated medicinal qualities that need to be explored and compounding pharmacies could make available. So I think we need to do that. The other thing I would like to point out that I think is overlooked is that we have some of the best medicines we've ever had, largely because we have companies that are willing to invest significant money to get those medicines because they see a good payoff. Too much control of that is going to reduce those incentives, and we won't have things like Gilead Sciences out in San Francisco who have broken through on HIV and some of the other things. So we have to be very careful we don't de-incentivize. On the other hand, it is going far too fast. We need to look at the patents. Thank you.
Thank you. Paul Davis?
Great question. I've been talking to a lot of pharmacists like yourself about these issues. I was in Fredonia a little while back, and the pharmacist saw me come in the front door, and he came flying around the corner and gave me an earful about many of these issues. Before my dad passed away, he had a drug that he literally needed to be able to get out of bed every morning that cost over $1,000 a month. So many American families are just struggling with that, and they're going without prescriptions that they need, and it has to end. We are paying vastly more for prescription drugs than any industrialized country. Look at Humira, for example. We pay twice as much for Humira as the British do. We pay 5 times as much as the South Africans do. And why is that happening? It's happening because the drug companies are running the United States Congress. They've been doing it for years, and it's time that we are going to send some people to Washington who have the courage to look at the drug companies and say, we support your efforts. We want you to be able to make a profit. We want you to be able to find life-saving cures and help make our lives better every day, but you cannot continue to gouge the American people. We need to give Medicare the ability to negotiate directly with the drug companies, which they do not have. We need to have patent reform so the drug companies can't take a drug that's going off patent and then change it up a little bit and repatent it again. We need to be able to move more generics into the market. Generics constitute 90% of our prescriptions, but only 26% of the cost. If we can get more generics into the market, we can lower drug costs for every American.
Thank you. And Kevin Jones.
Thank you, sir. And thank you for the question. Supply and demand. Supply and demand. Got a quick question for you. How many in here exercise? It's totally set apart. You exercise, right? Yeah, okay, good. Here's the deal. It's about 1 in 10. Supply and demand. I know I'm not trying to oversimplify the answer, but one of the things not that government can do, but that we can do is to exercise, eat better, eat right. And when you begin to do that, well, the demand goes down, right? So if we really want to, this is what we can do personally to bring down the actual issues with healthcare costs, is we can take personal responsibility and we can begin to work and we can begin to exercise. Now with that, what are you asking me, what government can do? There's over-regulation. You got Obamacare. I would have said the same thing. We can repeal, we can replace Obamacare. We can do those things. I have an uncle right now. dealing with the VA, he gets a certain amount of drugs. He didn't have the generic. Well, they switched him over because it was too expensive, switched him over to the generic, and the generic does not work for him. Well, then you get into VA issues in trying to get the right drugs and the things that he actually needs for what he's dealing with. But ultimately, it's overregulation. The things that we can do, or what we're asking government to do, we can repeal and replace Obamacare, and that's going to help. What we can do personally is we begin to exercise.
Thank you. Just to reinforce the audience, we'll take 30 seconds, run down, and just say what office you're running for, your political party, where you live. Anyway, in 30 seconds, you're on.
I'm going to alter that. You know, as we travel for a year wondering we should do this, we heard certain words over and over again, listening, the word one, the word unite, the words work together. Rosie, we were looking at each other driving down the road. We said, let's make the theme of our campaign One Kansas, hashtag One Kansas. That's the only way we will solve any problem. If we unite, we have to unite, solve problems. The only way we bridge the partisan divide is uniting. The only way we bridge the rural-urban divide is to unite. That's the core of our campaign. Thank you.
Tracy Mann, I'm the Lieutenant Governor of Kansas, Republican, running with Governor Collier up in this upcoming election. We would appreciate your vote and would ask for your vote. I live in Salina. I have 4 small children. For me, this race is easy. I view every issue that comes to me through the eyes of 4 people. And that is Quincy, who's 6, Austin, who's 5, Whitney, who's 3, and Elise, who's 8 months. And I constantly try to think, those are my children. I think, as issues come at me, come with the governor and I, what do we need to do with issues today that we can create a Kansas that our children, my children, your children will want to live in, raise a family in, and have a really high quality life? Would appreciate your vote.
My name is Ken Seltzer. I'm a CPA. I'm a businessman that has had a career in accounting as a CPA. And in the insurance field, I am your Kansas Insurance Commissioner. A lot of people think we've done a really good job with that element of government. We can do the same good job with the broader state government. Remember, KS for KS, Ken Seltzer for Kansas. My mom was really, really brilliant. Or remember, my Lieutenant Governor is Jen Sanderson, Ken and Jen. Or remember me when you drink a can of seltzer water. Any of those work. Remember that on August 7th. Thank you.
I hope you'll remember I'm the Lieutenant Governor candidate with Chris Kobach. We are the only 2 truly physical and social conservatives in this race. Have been and will continue to be when you give us your vote to lead this state back to prosperity and put it in a position that you and this great state deserve. Please vote for our candidacy.
Jeff Caldwell, running for Governor of Kansas. I am on the ballot on November 6th. I am running as a Libertarian, so I am past the primary. I am the only candidate running to cut government spending, cut taxes, legalize cannabis, protect the Second Amendment. 50% of Kansans support full legalization, 78% support medical cannabis. So I'm that candidate. You want to get more people to vote, I am bringing in voters from the outside. Hundreds of people have sent me messages asking me how to register to vote. You want to get more voters? I'm your guy.
I'm Dr. Arden Anderson, and I'm running for Governor of Kansas on the Democratic ticket. My candidate, or Lieutenant Governor candidate, is Dale Kauser, and my website is anderson2018.com. And the reason that I'm running for governor is because we've always continued with politicians, not just this state, in many of our states. And like many Kansans and like many people in the United States, we're just kind of tired of status quo politics. And even though they cheerlead and they say, hey, we're going to change this, we're going to change that, things don't get changed. I actually have the competence and the experience to do so.
I'm Carl Brewer. I'm a candidate for governor. My running mate is Chris Morrow, and I'm running for governor because I think it's time that we need change here in the state of Kansas, and I think that we can do better than what we have been doing. I was the former mayor of the largest city in the state of Kansas, and Chris Morrow was also a mayor of one of the smaller cities. But during the worst economic times in this country, I didn't say the state, I said in this country, we were able to pull our communities together regardless of our differences in our communities and make sure that they were successful. And that's what we want to do. We want to bring a common sense approach to the state of Kansas and bring everyone together to be able to work. And I think that we have a proven track record that can demonstrate that. Carl Brewer and Chris Morrow.
I'm Lynn Rogers from Wichita, running in the Democratic race for Lieutenant Governor with Senator Laura Kelly of Topeka. I think you'll find the two of us are the most experienced in terms of being able to turn the state around, and that she has been sounding the alarm for some of the problems in Topeka for the last 8 years, and knows where things need to be changed and where she can get started to work right away. So we would appreciate your support in August and also in November. Thank you.
I'm Paul Davis. I'm running for Congress, and I first want to thank you for being here tonight and taking some time, and I want to thank my former colleague Bill Fireburn for moderating. You know, a gentleman the other day said to me, you know, I just look at Washington, D.C. and I just shake my head all the time because they just seem like they're fighting all the time and they can never get anything done. Why can't they just work together? And I think that's the sentiment that most Kansans and most Americans have right now. And if we want them to work together, we got to send somebody to Washington who knows how to work together. That's what I did for 12 years. I built bipartisan coalitions to get things done in Topeka, and that's what I want to do for you in Congress. Thank you.
I'm Steve Fitzgerald. I'm running as a Republican for Congress. My wife Francie and I chose Kansas as a home for ourselves to raise our 5 children. We're heavily invested in the future. I have 19 grandchildren. As I mentioned earlier, I'm a retired Army officer. I also have my own small business. And I have a son-in-law who's 100% disabled with PTSD, so I understand that. I've been a commander of the local VFW, 3rd Degree Knight of Columbus, and I'm going to Washington to help solve those problems from a Kansas value point of view. Thank you.
I'm Kevin Jones. I'm running for Congress in the 2nd District also. And, you know, I'm just asking for an opportunity to serve you. That's what we're passionate about, and that's what my wife and I were called to do. I didn't get buzzed. She hasn't gone into labor, and I did make a mistake and say she was 3 days overdue. She is 4 days overdue. But that said, that's what we're passionate about. Proven hometown values. That's what we're passionate about. So I invite you to help us join the team and vote for us on August 7th. Thank you.
Karen Tyson, candidate for U.S. Congress, 2nd District, Republican. I'm pro-life, pro-Second Amendment, pro-First Amendment, which doesn't get mentioned often enough, and I ask for your support. This is a team effort. It's not about one person getting anything done. It's about working together and getting results. I have been successful in my career, and I've been successful as a legislator. We need somebody who's going to go to DC and get things done. I am that candidate.